Hi there. I'm Alcina. You ever show up for a family BBQ thinking it's just burgers and small talk, only to find out you're actually the unpaid babysitter? Again? My sister called me just the babysitter on a live stream, in front of everyone. No name, no thanks, just a prop in her performance. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part? It wasn't the first time. It was the final straw in a long, quiet story. One where I kept showing up, cleaning up, covering up, until I finally stopped. I walked away, with every kid she dumped on me. But what happened after that? Well, let's just say the truth didn't stay quiet for long. I always hated summer in Scottsdale. Not because of the heat, that you learn to live with. It was the performances that came with it. The matching outfits, the curated food platters, and of course, Rayanne's annual 4th of July barbecue. Or as she liked to call it, our family's brand moment. By noon, I was already regretting saying yes. As I stood in front of my closet that morning, I replayed Rayanne's voice note in my head. Just soft tones, okay? You know the vibe I'm going for. Light beige, dusty rose, nothing bold that pulls focus. It wasn't a suggestion. It never was with her. It was an order disguised as aesthetics, and I, like the seasoned older sister I was, brushed it off. Same way I brushed off all her little directions growing up. I wore a simple linen blouse tucked into jeans. My hair was tied up. I even left my favorite turquoise earrings in the drawer because Rayanne once said they distracted the frame. That's what I'd become, aware of the frame more than the family. I pulled up to Mom's house a few minutes past 2. The front yard was already filled with kids running wild, trays of food on folding tables, and Rayanne's voice rising above it all. Wait, don't touch that yet. I haven't posted it. Hazel and Miles spotted me before I even shut the car door. Auntie Al! Hazel squealed, racing over with her brother right behind her. I barely had time to bend down before they clung to me. Rayanne, from behind the grill setup, shouted over, "Can you keep an eye on them for a sec? I need to fix this lighting." She didn't wait for a response. She never did. 1 second turned into 10, 10 into 30. Then she disappeared altogether. I walked inside with the kids clinging to my hands, already sweating through their matching patriotic outfits. Rayanne was in the dining room, crouched low, adjusting the angle of a red, white, blue charcuterie board. Her phone, propped on a mini tripod, captured every second. I stood there waiting, nothing. No, hey, no glad you made it, just a flick of her hand like I was stage crew. I settled the kids outside with juice boxes and apple slices I found in Mom's fridge. Rayanne's friends were arriving now, all glossy smiles and curated laughter. I knew none of them. Then it happened. She went live. I was cutting watermelon in the corner of the patio when I heard her pitch rise. Hey fam, happy 4th! It's Ray, coming to you from our backyard BBQ. She panned the camera slowly across the scene, kids playing, trays of food, herself in a red sundress, perfectly lit by golden hour. Someone commented, "Supermom, who's watching the little ones?" Rayanne giggled, then flipped the camera toward me, sweat slicked, kneeling by Hazel who had just spilled her lemonade. "Oh, that's just my sister," she said brightly. "Basically our full-time babysitter." The laugh that followed was instant. From her, from someone off camera, from the phone where hearts and likes poured in. My chest clenched, my hand, still holding a fruit knife, froze midair. Just my sister, not Alcina. Not the woman who rearranged work schedules to pick up Hazel from school when Rayanne had a photo shoot. Not the one who drove 4 hours when Miles had the flu and Rayanne had a brand deal deadline. Just the help. I looked around. No one said anything. Not Mom, who stood nearby. Not the cousins who giggled softly. The same cousins who once cried on my shoulder when Rayanne accidentally aired out their secrets for likes. I stood slowly, took a deep breath, and walked to the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of lemonade, lukewarm now, and sat alone at the corner table. Through the glass doors, I could see Rayanne staging another photo with the kids. Hazel was fidgeting, but Rayanne kept adjusting her pose. Then I watched her take the fruit plate I'd arranged, swap the slices, add mint, drizzle honey. She turned it toward the camera with a smile like she made it herself. Something clicked inside me. Not a snap, not a meltdown, just a quiet shift, like a mental lever finally being pulled. I wasn't mad because she took credit. I was mad because I let her. I sipped my drink and watched the filtered version of my family play out on Rayanne's phone screen. I was done watching. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. That would have given her content. I just waited. Waited until her focus drifted elsewhere. Waited until the camera tilted back toward the party and away from me. Then I picked up Hazel's backpack, tossed in Miles's flip-flops, grabbed the baby wipes from the table, and reached for the diaper bag Rayanne had dumped by the cooler an hour earlier. "I want to stay," Miles whined. "I know, baby," I whispered, hoisting him onto my hip, "but we've got something better planned." Hazel didn't ask questions. She grabbed my hand like she always had, like she knew I was the only one who'd never drop it. As I walked down the side path, past the parked cars, I didn't look back, not even when the wind carried Rayanne's laughter down the driveway. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to hit my breaking point, with a diaper bag in one hand and 4 juice boxes in the other. We made it halfway down the street before I realized I didn't even have my car keys. I had left them in the side pocket of the tote Rayanne used to organize sunscreen and wipes. Somehow that became my responsibility too. I paused at the edge of the sidewalk, adjusted Hazel's backpack on my shoulder, and turned back around. "Are we going home?" Hazel asked, squinting against the sun. "Not yet, sweetie. Just grabbing something real quick." Back at the house, the music was louder. Rayanne was filming again, now in front of a setup of corn on the cob and sparkling water bottles she hadn't so much as touched all day. The Mom of the Year routine was in full swing. Before I could get past the driveway, she saw me. "There you are," she chirped, jogging over in wedge sandals like nothing was off. "Okay, can you just keep them for like 20 more? I need to take a few shots for the brand, and the lighting's finally working with this shirt." Her voice was breathy and sweet, like I was doing her a little favor. I wanted to say no. I really did. But Hazel had already sat herself down under the patio umbrella, and Miles was halfway through the second juice box. 20 minutes, I said flatly. She gave me a quick squeeze on the arm, the kind that didn't mean a thing, and turned on her heel. 20 minutes became 30, then 45. And somehow, in between answering Hazel's, "Can you open this?" and Miles', "I need to pee," 2 other kids ended up in my care, my cousin's twins, Lacey and Ryan. I didn't even see who dropped them off. People just started handing me children like I had a sign on my back that read, "Free childcare available." By the time I realized Rayanne had fully vanished, the twins were sticking orange-stained fingers into a bag of grapes, and Hazel was sobbing because sunscreen got in her eyes. I pulled wet wipes out like I was clocked in. No check-in, no texts, no Rayanne. I reached for my phone, out of both instinct and pure fatigue, and that's when the screen lit up. One new notification, Google Calendar invite from Rayanne Calloway. Title, BBQ Content Flow and Child Coverage, Final. I opened it. Color-coded blocks, timelines. Assigned kid coverage per adult. My name was assigned from 2 o'clock to 3 p.m., 3:15 to 4 p.m., and a note below. Keep Hazel and Miles in shade for golden hour shots. Do not interrupt. I blinked, read it again. She didn't ask me. She didn't even tell me. She assigned me. Like a task. Like I was staff. Not a partner. Not family. Staff. A breeze lifted the edge of the picnic tablecloth and flapped it against my arm. I stared out over the backyard. Folding chairs, melting popsicles, and Rayanne's ring light leaning on a cooler. My jaw tightened. "You okay, Auntie Al?" Hazel asked, tugging my sleeve gently. "Yeah," I said, kneeling to her level. "I'm good, honey, just thinking." But I wasn't. I wasn't just thinking. I was boiling. A few minutes later, Miles tripped over his flip-flops and dumped his entire juice down the front of my lap. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I just helped him up and checked his knees for scrapes. Then Hazel shrieked. She had Cheeto dust in her eyes. One of the twins threw up behind a bush. The other started crying because no one noticed her chalk drawing. I looked around. Still no Rayanne. Still no, "Thank you." Still no, "I got it from here." I gathered the kids, grabbed a bottle of water, and led them across the yard to the edge of the tree line. There was a shaded patch of grass by the fence. I laid out a towel, sat down cross-legged, and breathed. 1, 2, 3. I made it to 10, then started again. Not because it worked, but because it was the only thing keeping me from standing up and screaming in the middle of this ridiculous circus. I looked down at my lap, now sticky, stained, and covered in cracker crumbs. Hazel had curled up beside me, using my thigh like a pillow. Miles was pulling leaves off a low-hanging branch. The twins were finally quiet, their faces pink with heat. That's when the thought came. It didn't crash in, didn't shout. It slid into my brain like it had always been there, waiting for permission to be acknowledged. This isn't just today. This isn't a one-off. This is a system, a setup. One I had been too polite, too conditioned, too easygoing big sister to question. Rayanne had designed a world where she was always the star, and I was always available, always convenient, always out of frame but carrying the weight. And maybe the worst part? I'd been trained since I was 12 to smile through it. Hazel had dozed off beside me, her head heavy against my thigh, while Miles built little towers from sticks and leaves at our feet. The twins were still nearby, surprisingly quiet now, but I barely noticed. I was somewhere else entirely, years away from this patch of grass and melting sunscreen, somewhere between guilt and clarity. It's funny how one memory can kick open the door to every other. I was 12 the first time someone handed me Rayanne and said, "Here, hold her a sec." It was our mom. She was hosting her friends from work. Wine glasses on coasters, plastic-covered couches, the smell of overcooked lasagna hanging in the air. Rayanne had just turned 1 and was already wailing from the playpen. Mom, without even looking back, said over her shoulder, "Can't you calm her down? You're the big sister. She looks up to you." I remember holding Rayanne close, bouncing her slightly, even though she squirmed. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying not to mess up. I thought if I got it right, maybe Mom would smile again the way she used to before Dad left. That line, "You're the big sister," became gospel in our house, a get-out-of-responsibility-free card for everyone but me. When Rayanne colored the walls with Sharpie, "Alcina, why weren't you watching her?" When she forgot her homework for the 5th time in a row, "You could have helped her organize better, honey." They didn't call it parentification. They called it family. By the time I hit high school, I wasn't the sister. I was the backup plan. I made sure Rayanne had her soccer gear, remembered her dentist appointments, even ironed her outfits when she had middle school band performances. I can still smell the starch. But the real kicker? I thought this made me the good one. The dependable one. And that kind of identity becomes its own trap. Because if you're the one who always shows up, no one asks if you're okay. They assume you're fine because you're functioning. I wasn't. Fast forward to Christmas 2 years ago. Rayanne showed up 2 hours late, no gifts in hand. No explanation either. Just breezed through the front door like she was the guest of honor. Dinner was halfway through when Mom pulled me aside and slipped a Hallmark envelope into my hand. I remember how softly she spoke, like we were co-conspirators. I gave her some help. "Let's not make a thing out of it, okay?" Inside was $200. Mom patted my hand like I was supposed to feel honored. That night, Rayanne posted a selfie, her in front of a massive mirror, holding 3 luxury shopping bags. The caption, "Holiday haul, #blessed grind pays off." My stomach sank. Not because of the money, but because I realized Mom had been quietly financing Rayanne's image all along. The independent single mom brand she bragged about? It was built on uncredited support, from our mother, from me, from whoever she could charm or guilt into enabling her. And me? I was just supposed to stay quiet, to not make a scene, to understand. Like that time I took on a weekend job, tutoring high school kids after my long shifts at the office, because Mom's mortgage had gone into forbearance. We couldn't lose the house, I told myself. It's where Rayanne and the kids stay when she gets overwhelmed, where Mom naps between doctor's appointments. I made it work, canceled a vacation, postponed car repairs, ate noodles for a month. 2 months later, I found out Rayanne had used her starter fund to launch her blog, the one that kicked off her influencer career. No one told me. No one ever did. That's when the deeper layer of resentment started brewing, not just because of the money or time, but because it became clear. I wasn't included in the story Rayanne told about herself. In her world, she was the underdog who climbed her way out with grit and passion. She didn't mention the nights I stayed up editing her first YouTube video while she cried about fonts, She didn't post about the groceries I paid for or the babysitting I rearranged my life to provide. What did I get in return? More requests, more expectations, and silence when it mattered most. Turns out, loyalty doesn't earn you love. It earns you obligations, invisible ones you can't invoice or explain to anyone without sounding bitter. I let the breeze touch my face as I leaned back on my elbows, still watching the kids play. They deserved better than this cycle of pretending everything was okay just to keep appearances intact. I wasn't going to confront Rayanne, not yet. But something had shifted. The old reflex, to be nice, to stay helpful, was cracking under its own weight, and I was done earning obligations. It was time to start asking questions and stop saying yes. It was nearly 4 p.m. The sun had dipped just enough to cast long shadows across the yard, but the heat still clung to the air like plastic wrap. Hazel had fallen asleep again, this time on a lawn chair under a beach towel I'd fashioned into a makeshift canopy. Miles sat by my feet, trying to blow bubbles with a wand that had long since dried out. My phone buzzed against my thigh. I picked it up, assuming it was another calendar notification or Rayanne summoning me to grab a plate of sliders for the kids. Instead, I read this. Can't believe she actually showed up looking like that LOL babysitter vibes FR. It took me a full 5 seconds to register what I was reading. Another ping followed. OMG, wrong person. She sent it directly to me. I didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at the words on the screen as my fingers clenched slowly around the phone. There it was. Every insult she had been too cowardly to say out loud, now typed and delivered straight into my hands. A typo with perfect timing, a truth she couldn't walk back. My throat tightened. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She didn't see me as her sister. She didn't even see me as a person, just a prop. A warm body to hold kids and hand out wipes while she struck poses and collected engagement. A few minutes passed in silence. I don't remember hearing anything, not the kids, not the music, just the ringing in my ears and the blood that started to boil low in my chest. And then came the scream. One of the toddlers, one of the twins, had tripped over a sprinkler and landed on the gravel edge near the patio. It wasn't serious, just a scraped knee. But like a signal had gone off, Rayanne was suddenly there, hair immaculate, camera on. Where were you? She said sharply, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. You're supposed to be watching them! I stood a few feet away, still holding my phone, still processing the message. I didn't even look at the kid. My eyes were locked on Rayanne. Her tone wasn't concerned. It wasn't maternal. It was performative. She gestured toward the child with a gasp, eyes wide for the camera lens angled over her shoulder, as if this whole moment was part of a sponsored story arc. A cousin handed over a Band-Aid. Someone else muttered, "Kids are wild today," before drifting off. But Rayanne didn't break character. I didn't say a word, not then, because this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of stress. This was her weapon of choice, framing. Make me look absent. Make herself look overworked, get pity, get praise. She didn't even check if I was okay. Didn't ask why I was standing stiff as stone, phone screen still lit in my hand. She didn't have to. She already knew what she'd done. I turned away. Not to retreat, but to breathe. I needed 30 seconds without an audience, without her lens chasing my reaction. By the garden shed, under the fig tree, I stood with my back to the party. The rustle of kids playing, the clink of utensils, the background music, it all blurred into white noise. I opened Rayanne's message again, read it one more time. Then I scrolled. Through old texts, through voice notes, through all the small dismissals I'd archived and forgiven too quickly. I just need you to grab them. You're better with tantrums. You're so chill. That's why you're perfect for this. It wasn't appreciation. It was justification. She needed to make me small so she could feel big. That was the unspoken exchange. But not anymore. I stared at the message until the light dimmed on my phone screen. Then I turned it off, slid it in my pocket. When I came back around the shed, Hazel was sitting up, rubbing her eyes. Miles had knocked over the bubble solution trying to refill it. The twins were gone, Probably back with their dad. I smiled gently at Hazel, handed her a napkin, and kneeled to help Miles. Rayanne was across the yard now, showing something on her phone to one of her influencer friends. They laughed. They always laughed. But I wasn't laughing. Not anymore. Because suddenly, it all made sense. The calendar invite, the live stream embarrassment, the wrong message, the public scolding. This wasn't disorganization. It wasn't a sister overwhelmed. It was a strategy. She needed chaos to clean up so she could look composed. She needed a scapegoat to look sacrificial. She needed me. But only behind the curtain. I was the setup. She was the main act. And she'd just handed me the script. So I smiled, walked back inside, and got ready to return the favor. Rayanne was standing at the far end of the patio, one hand on her hip, the other fishing something dramatic out of the cooler. I watched her closely, my arms folded, my weight shifting to my right leg. She glanced around quickly, eyes darting like a stage manager counting down to cue. Then, oh, so accidentally, she let the top of the cooler slam, knocking over the edge of a nearby pitcher. Ice water spilled across the flagstone like a wave. It reached the kids' playmat, soaked through their snacks, and puddled under the toddler's feet. One of the twins slipped, landing with a soft yelp. Not hurt, just startled. And right on cue, Rayanne gasped like a daytime soap star. "Alcina, weren't you watching them?" Her voice sliced through the hum of barbecue chatter like a fire alarm. A few heads turned. Of course they did. That was the goal. I bent down, grabbed a towel from the nearby stack, and calmly mopped the water without rushing. I didn't speak until the towel was soaked through. Then I stood and looked her dead in the eye. "Interesting," I said, loud enough for only her and maybe a few eavesdropping uncles to hear. "You've managed to spill something every hour today, almost like a theme." Her jaw tightened. Behind her, the camera she'd mounted on a tripod buzzed back to life, recording again. "Of course." "This is your third staged mess," I added, folding the towel neatly. "You really commit to the bit." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said quickly, voice clipped. But she knew. And now she knew that I knew. Still, I let it go, for now. Later, inside the guest bedroom, the kids had finally crashed. One twin snored gently, curled into the far corner of the mattress. Hazel clutched her plush raccoon. Miles had one shoe on and one off, but he was too exhausted to care. I sat at the desk by the window, scrolling through my inbox. I wasn't looking for anything. Just needed a break from Rayanne's airbrushed world. That's when I saw it, a shared Google folder. Family Brand Management Drafts. I blinked. It was a drive Rayanne had accidentally added me 2 months ago, likely assuming she'd deleted my access when I never reacted. Curiosity prickled under my skin as I clicked through. Folders, subfolders, documents, all meticulously labeled. I opened one titled Narrative Planning. It read, "Focus. Position Rayanne as overwhelmed yet graceful. Alcina == stable support cast. Do not center Alcina in any images unless absolutely necessary. Non-disruptive background only." Another doc. Suggested caption angles. Make Rayanne's chaos look real. Audiences respond to authenticity. Use Alcina as stabilizer. Don't over-explain. Let viewers assume. And then, authored not just by Rayanne, but co-signed, Margot Calloway, our mom. I couldn't breathe for a second. They weren't just using me. They were coordinating it, framing it, marketing it, packaging me like a prop with no voice, no will, just an emotional backdrop to Rayanne's curated breakdowns and redemptions. They didn't just lie to me. They branded me. And I let them. Not anymore. I exited the folder, locked my phone, and stared at my own reflection in the glass. My face looked strange under the filtered patio lights, a mix of exhaustion and something new, resolve. Sometime later, Rayanne found me alone in the hallway. She leaned casually against the doorframe like she hadn't just humiliated me in public. "So," she said, "you done pouting, or should we pencil in more drama before cake?" I didn't flinch. I stepped closer, close enough that she had to shift her weight to stand up straighter. "You've turned me into a side character in a movie you wrote yourself," I said, voice low and calm. "But just remember, when the real credits roll, the audience always finds out the truth." She scoffed. "Are you threatening me?" I smiled slowly. Not at all. But I suggest you stop rolling before the next scene doesn't go your way. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I walked away. Not rushed, not rattled. Because she didn't realize what she'd activated. She thought she was dealing with the same tired sister. The one who would fold, who would sigh and apologize and clean up after her, even now. But that woman? She didn't exist anymore. Because if Rayanne thought I was bluffing, she clearly didn't know the version of me she just unlocked. The sun was starting to dip, casting long golden shadows across the lawn as families packed up leftovers and folded up lawn chairs. The laughter that had once filled the backyard now felt thinner, like the air had shifted, and everyone could sense something was off, even if they couldn't name it. I wasn't interested in small talk or goodbyes. I slipped away before Rayanne noticed, loading the kids into the back of my car. They were too tired to ask questions, and I didn't offer explanations. I buckled Hazel in first, her head already tilted toward the window, then lifted Miles into his booster. The silence in that car ride home felt sacred. Once we got back to my place, I settled them on the couch with a movie, handed out juice boxes, and kissed the tops of their sticky heads. Then, I walked into my bedroom, shut the door behind me, and pulled out my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second. Then I typed the name I hadn't thought of in years. Alex Morales. Back in college, Alex was the guy who knew how to cut a 5-minute campus promo into something that looked like it belonged on a Netflix docuseries. He used to freelance for content creators when TikTok was still musical.ly. I remembered hearing his name tossed around in Rayanne's branding days, and sure enough, when I sent the message, he replied within 5 minutes. Wow, didn't expect to hear from you. And yeah, used to work for your sister. Keyword, used to. I didn't ask for drama, I asked for facts. He gave me both. Screenshots, Venmo receipts, messages where she told him to overlay subtle crying and add soft piano under voiceover for sincerity. And worst of all, a Dropbox link to a draft video that never went live. I clicked it. The screen showed Rayanne, makeup-free, curled on her couch with a mug in hand. She sniffled twice, reached for a tissue, looked off camera as if recalling something painful, except in the background I heard Alex's voice. Okay, good, but can you lean left when you talk about feeling abandoned? The plant's in frame. She nodded, adjusted, and started over. I watched the whole 2-minute cut, not because I needed proof, because I needed permission, from myself, to believe what I already knew. She paid people to make her sadness believable. Meanwhile, I had been living mine, quietly, fully, and without an ounce of applause. By the time I closed the laptop, night had fallen. I lit the lamp on my desk and opened a blank document. It was time to flip the script. I wasn't interested in takedowns or viral drama. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I uploaded everything, the screenshots, the calendar invites, the clip of Rayanne calling me just a babysitter. And yes, even the staged spill footage, with captions. I wrote one sentence. Sometimes silence isn't grace. It's fear. And I'm not afraid anymore. Then I hit post. I left my phone on the desk, turned it face down, and went to wash the dishes. I didn't need to refresh for notifications. I knew what would come. Curiosity, doubt, then understanding. By the time I checked again an hour later, the video had over 11,000 views. The comments were mixed at first. This feels personal? Maybe this should have been handled offline. But then they started shifting. I've been the sister, I see you. She didn't make you a babysitter, she made you her PR plan. Don't ever apologize for setting boundaries. Ever. I scrolled until my eyes burned. Rayanne's page had already shifted tone. She posted a story in full glam, saying, "Some people will twist anything for attention. I'm staying focused on the positive." She pasted on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, but it was too late. Truth, once spoken, sticks. The next night I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and answered it. Rayanne stood there. No kids, no phone, no audience, just fury. "You've ruined everything," she snapped. "My numbers tanked. A brand pulled out of our deal. You made me look like a monster." "No," I said quietly. "You did that. I just gave people the flashlight." You think this makes you better than me? No, I replied. It makes me honest. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to say that. I opened the door wider, gesturing for her to speak freely. She didn't move. I worked hard to build this, she hissed. And you built it on borrowed empathy, I said evenly. Eventually, borrowed things get returned, or they break. She stared at me, her expression flickering between disbelief and wounded pride. For the first time in a long time, Rayanne had no script to read from. No camera, no mom in the background doing cleanup, just me, and her, and consequences. She turned without a word and walked away. No dramatic exit, just silence. And the worst part for her? This time the comment section wasn't on her side. 2 days had passed since Rayanne's empire cracked. Not collapsed, cracked. That's how it begins, doesn't it? Quietly. Like a hairline fracture in porcelain. Unseen from the outside, but spreading fast underneath the surface. The phone hadn't rung much, except for people pretending they'd just seen the video, or were so sorry to hear about the family stuff. I let the calls go to voicemail, let the messages pile up. I wasn't interested in commentary. But when Braylon showed up outside my office building just before closing, that was unexpected. He looked like someone who hadn't slept. His hands were stuffed into his jacket pockets, eyes rimmed red, but not from tears, from shame. I stepped outside, waiting. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, watching cars pass. Finally, he said, I called Alex, the editor. I tilted my head. You did? He nodded. Wanted to hear it straight from him, not just a video, the raw stuff. He didn't even hesitate, sent me everything. He looked at me then, really looked. She asked him to add fake crying, sound overlays, told him to edit out you in every clip, said the sister ruins the solo mom vibe. I didn't flinch. I just waited. I defended her, you know, he said. To my friends, my parents, my team. I thought Rayanne was honest, real. Turns out she's just market research and designer jeans. I didn't need an apology, but I respected that he showed up to say it anyway. I'm leaving her, he said softly. For good. I'm not surprised, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. I kept thinking the drama was the cost of brilliance, but now I see it wasn't brilliance, it was branding. I gave a small, weary smile. You were never the enemy, Braylon, but maybe now you'll stop mistaking production for personality. He looked down, nodded once, and walked off. No speech, no hug, just the quiet end of a chapter that never really belonged to him. Later that evening, after I'd fed the kids and they were both finally asleep, Hazel curled up with a comic book and Miles snoring into a stuffed dragon, I heard my phone ring from the kitchen. Mom, lit up on the screen. I stared at it for a beat, then answered. Alcina, came her voice, clipped and angry. What in the world are you doing? I exhaled slowly. Hi, Mom. You've humiliated this family, she snapped. Rayanne is spiraling. She lost Braylon. She's lost sponsorships. Do you know what kind of damage you've done? Do you know what kind of damage you ignored? I asked, calm and quiet. Margot huffed, like I'd interrupted her script. She's your sister, she said. You don't air dirty laundry. You don't drag family into the public square. No, I said. You're right. You drag family behind closed doors and pretend they're fine while they drown. A beat of silence. Then her tone shifted. That brittle softness she thought would disarm me. You've always been stronger, Alcina, she said. More grounded. I needed you to be the stable one. That's what family is. Sacrifice. I sat down at the kitchen table. Family isn't immunity. She didn't answer. I covered for Rayanne for years, protected your silence, swallowed mine, and all it got me was being labeled the help on a live stream. Her voice cracked, defensive and pleading all at once. She's your sister. Do you want her to lose everything? I let the question hang there, let the weight of it land where it belonged. She already did, I said. She lost me. And with that, I hung up. Not with a slam, not in anger, but in clarity. I blocked her number, not to punish her, but to protect what little space I'd finally carved out for myself. The chain that had quietly tied me to generational guilt snapped. That night, I sat outside on the back steps with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the stars slowly emerge above Scottsdale's rooftops, The air smelled like cooling concrete and grass clippings, familiar, ordinary, safe. For once I didn't replay the call in my head. I didn't wonder what I could have said better. That reflex had died. Because it wasn't my job to fix what I didn't break. The next time I'd see Rayanne, she wouldn't be the one doing the talking. It was a dry, sweltering afternoon in Scottsdale. The kind where the sun sits low, just enough to cast long shadows but not merciful enough to cool the air. I pulled into my mother's driveway slower than usual, my fingers hesitating on the ignition before I turned it off. Margot had texted the family group chat the night before. Let's come together. We need peace, not pride. Peace, I thought. That was rich, coming from the woman who'd weaponized silence like a scalpel. Still, I came. Because when you want to be done for good, sometimes you have to walk straight through the mess, one last time. The backyard looked nearly identical to the BBQ from days earlier. Same folding chairs, same paper lanterns still lazily dangling from the trees. Only the atmosphere had changed. No kids laughing, no grill sizzling, just low murmurs and avoidance. Rayanne sat near the patio table, sunglasses on despite the shade, her hair undone in that purposeful messy bun. Her raw look, curated to appear uncurated. Mom stood by the lemonade pitcher, hands clasped, eyes darting between us like a referee who hadn't trained for this level of match. I'm glad you came, Margot began, voice warm and shaky. We've all made mistakes. We just want peace again. I said nothing. Just watched Rayanne, waited. She didn't speak either, until Mom nudged her with a not-so-subtle glance. Rayanne stood, adjusted her sleeves like she was about to receive an award, not own up to anything. Then, of course, she reached for her phone. I think people deserve to hear that we're working through things, she said, angling the lens toward herself. That's when I stood too. If you want to stream, I said evenly, let's give them the ending. The air shifted. Margot's mouth opened slightly, unsure if she should stop me. I pulled my phone from my bag, unlocked it, and tapped a folder I'd renamed that morning. Final scene. First, I opened the shared PR folder on screen and projected it to the Bluetooth speaker Rayanne had set up earlier for ambience. Clip by clip, slide by slide. Her scripts, her talking points, strategy lines like, crisis builds sympathy, and my personal favorite, Alcina is the safety net, lean into it without highlighting her. Gasps, silence, then the final piece. I tapped play on the BBQ livestream clip. Rayanne's voice filled the backyard. Oh, that's just my sister. Basically our full-time babysitter. But this time I didn't flinch. I watched her face as she heard her words played back. Louder, sharper, not hidden under filtered comments or flirty captions. Just truth, raw and plain. You wanted me invisible, I said, my voice louder now, unwavering. Congratulations. After today I will be. To you, forever. Hazel tugged gently at my side. Miles looked up at me, then at Rayanne. Something in his face said he understood more than he should. I crouched down, held their hands, and stood with them. When I looked up, Margot finally found her voice. Alcina, please, let's not destroy everything. I met her gaze one last time. You may not know how to love both your daughters, I said softly, but I finally learned how to love myself. And I turned, past the table, past the fairy lights Rayanne had probably planned to use as a backdrop, past the woman who had called me a babysitter for clicks, and the mother who let it happen for comfort. I didn't cry, I didn't run, I didn't announce my exit with drama. I just walked. Hazel squeezed my hand. Miles swung his little backpack over his shoulder like a miniature soldier on a mission. Not a single camera followed me as I left, and for the first time, I didn't need one to feel seen. 2 weeks passed. The Arizona heat hadn't softened, but everything else had. The silence in my house wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm, intentional, peaceful even. Hazel and Miles adjusted quicker than I expected, maybe because they'd never really felt safe until now, or maybe because I finally had. Rayanne, on the other hand, vanished. Her break from social media post went up the day after the family intervention. No apology. Just a filtered photo of iced coffee beside a journal and the caption, time to recenter, logging off for now, #healing is messy. But the internet didn't log off with her. Within 48 hours, more clips surfaced, former editors, ex-collaborators, people she ghosted. Threads started piecing together the curated life she had polished for years, exposing it frame by frame. One sponsor posted a quiet note. "We believe in authentic storytelling and accountability. Effective immediately, our partnership with Rayanne Delaney has ended." Just like that, her carefully constructed world cracked, then crumbled. No one came to sweep it up this time. I didn't comment, didn't gloat. I didn't need to. She disappeared from screens the same way I used to disappear from her lens, quietly, purposefully, and without acknowledgement. Margot didn't call. Not to explain, not to apologize. But 2 days ago, my cousin sent a blurry photo of Rayanne unloading boxes from the back of a U-Haul into Margot's garage. No one had mentioned where Hazel and Miles were. No one asked how they were doing, so I filed paperwork. Not out of spite, not to claim victory. I did it so they'd know that real care doesn't vanish the second the cameras stop rolling. That love isn't a branding tactic or a post strategy. With the help of a lawyer friend, I filed for emergency temporary guardianship. When the clerk stamped the last page, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like something inside me had shifted into alignment, not dramatic, not loud, just right. I cleared out the spare bedroom, bought a second-hand dresser and let Hazel paint the drawer knobs however she wanted. Rainbows, stars, whatever came to mind. Miles helped me set up a reading corner. We built a blanket fort over it with Christmas lights that blinked like tiny galaxies. At night, I made tea and let them talk. Or not talk. I never pressed. Sometimes they just sat close, like they were learning what comfort actually felt like. And when they were asleep, I wrote. Not on anyone's deadline, not for engagement. I started a blog, nothing fancy, no filters, just my words, raw and ordinary. I called it After the Frame. I posted once a week, some stories from my life, some lessons I wished someone had told me, some reminders I needed to tell myself. I didn't name Rayanne. I didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. A few readers messaged me, mostly women, sisters, single moms, even one therapist who said she was recommending my post, "Silence Isn't Grace," to her clients. That message made me cry. The silent kind. The kind that trickles down when you're alone and you don't mind. I wasn't a hero, I was just honest. And somehow, that was enough. Sometimes I still wonder if Rayanne will show up again. Not to reconcile, but to reclaim some version of the story. If she does, I'll be ready. Not with fury or proof, with boundaries. She can't use what no longer belongs to her. Hazel now introduces me to new teachers as the one who makes the best grilled cheese and always answers her phone. Not aunt, not mom, just mine. Miles recently told a friend at the park, "My person is Alcina." And maybe that's all I ever wanted to be, someone's person, not by title, not by obligation, by choice. Family isn't about shared blood or who gets the final say at a barbecue. It's about who shows up when no one else will. It's about who stays when the live stream ends. I'm not just a babysitter. I'm not just the sister. I am the adult who chose peace over performance. And the kids? They followed me not because they had to, but because they knew I'd never leave them behind. Maybe your story doesn't look like mine. Maybe you weren't the babysitter in your family, but maybe you were the fixer, the invisible one, the peacekeeper who swallowed your truth so someone else could shine. If that's you, I just want to say, you're not alone, and it's not too late to choose yourself. I used to think loyalty meant silence. That being the strong one meant staying quiet. But here's what I've learned. Strength isn't in how long you carry the weight. It's in knowing when to put it down. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion, not your title, not your years, not your peace. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the first step to becoming who you were meant to be all along. And you don't need an audience to matter. You just need to stop shrinking for people who only see your usefulness, not your worth. So now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt like the one who holds everything together while no one holds you? Or maybe you've been in Rayanne's shoes, caught up in image over intimacy. Drop a comment and let's talk about it. Tell me where you're watching from. If this story touched you, just comment 1 so I know it found the right hearts. If it didn't connect with you, tell me why. I want to learn too. And hey, if you want more real stories like this, stories that go beyond filters and followers, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because I promise, this channel, it's not about the spotlight.